hello everyone. Welcome to the session before lunch. Yeah, I just want to preface this with the mention that a colleague helped to set the title earlier because I didn't have time to pick 3 words. But if you're here because you're expecting like classic modeling tools, go get a coffee and come back in half an hour, because this is not what this is. This is actually a presentation on point cloud tools, namely PC Reduce, PC Normal, and PC Surface. We're also going to look at a bit at Quad Remesh and also Material X procedural 2D nodes that are included in Houdini 20. So point clouds. In 19.5, there was the LiDAR import, and you could import like your scan data. But in Houdini 20, there are the nodes for reducing point cloud reduce, for reducing like redundant points that you may or may not need, namely for probably terrain scans that are like very large scale. And if you don't want to waste like computation time to just process and mesh things, like you can just call them. Then there's the point cloud normal, where Houdini needs to be told a direction to generate a surface, and then you get a mesh with the point cloud surface. And all of these have settings within, and we're going to take a look at some of these today. So the first one we're going to start with. So I got this mesh from Open Topography. You can also download that yourself, or any other meshes that are available, and try this at home. Let's go into Houdini. So as I mentioned earlier, we have the LiDAR import. And one thing I really want to point out, because I was smart and tried to position the things, position the scans with a separate transform node, like after the LiDAR import. And I was told, no, don't do that, because your results are going to be like pretty poo. So you always want to just religiously click on immediately move centroid to origin, because the closer you are to origin, like your scan data, the better the processing of everything will be. And then everything else that you need to position, rotate, and correct the scan data. So in my case, you can see like, yeah, I oriented it correctly, and you'll want to do that the same for yourself. So after that, here is the point cloud reduce, and the voxel size is basically just like your resolution. So if we look at the import, that's 17 million, and after point cloud reduce, we are at 2.2. And I can even, just for the purpose of this presentation, just put it a bit lower. Okay, maybe that's too low, but we can always change it, right? That's the beauty of Houdini. You can just like switch things back after. So okay, maybe this is too little. After that, we have the point cloud normal, and this is where we are going to enable a visualizer. So in general, like having this option on allows you to see the output of your mesh, like your normal direction. And sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. But I find that if you do that for a large scale, it does make a difference. And then there's 2 methods, this orient normals towards hint. I was told by the developer that this is good for a specific use case. In this specific terrain that I have, it didn't actually give me the result that I want. So I can actually show you the difference if we do that. And he also suggested to just make sure that you don't set your Y direction to just like a 1 for up. You want to just like 1 a lot. So just put a lot of zeros behind it. I think he even says that. Yeah. Very high up in the Y direction, so extra zeros. One more thing that I want to highlight that you should pay attention to is proximity radius and max neighbors. So Because my scan data is so huge, it's like, what, 125 kilometers here and over on the other side as well. So it's a giant distance. You'll want to increase that because normally if I just do the PC normal, by default, the settings are 0.5 and 20. So adjust it accordingly. Smaller you have, like, yeah, you can use the default settings, but larger trains, this is optimal, like between 5 and 15, I think. And then after that, we can make our surface, and this is going to cook for a bit. Oh, it already cooked. Okay. And so the max subdivision, I think by default is by 10, and the 12 is just like giving it higher. And the boundary type by default is set to 0, but because our mesh is, our scan is like open, we set it to open. And you can have a look at some areas. I guess actually it's not visible here. The scan data should show there were a lot of holes and gaps, and what the PC surface did is try to fill those. And some of those are kind of not usable, so you might as well just cull them, which is what I did here. So in the end, I get something like this, and well, I don't even want that part, but I can just adjust it afterwards. This guy. Yeah, so that's the terrain example, the large scale example. The other version we're going to look at, or the other example, is like a smaller scale one where it's like a shoe scan. So I have the shoe here, I'll show you after, but basically I didn't need to use the point cloud reduce because I'm okay with that amount of points. And yeah, the point cloud surface is used after that. So here on the left is my import. After that is my surfacing. And then over here actually is where I applied quad remesh. Why? Because I wanted to print the shoe. And yeah, this is the shoe, the tiny shoe. So you're welcome to check it out after. Because it's always cool to, like, you work in 3D and, you know, you just look at it all the time. But when you have it in your hand, it's like a totally different thing. And if anybody does 3D printing here, you know that you want to have just peace of mind to not have jaggy surfaces. So that's also why I did the quad remesh, just so that I can have a smooth output. And it would have been even smoother if I printed in resin, but I didn't have time. So this slide is showing the curvature edge flow, and it's from 0.0 over here on the left until the right is 1. And you'll notice that there's a lot more like stuff going on the 1 setting. I asked what are those blue and red dots, and they're called singularities. So yeah, basically what I actually used was guide output. It may, like, I'll show you guys the difference after, and it might not even be noticeable, but again, like, everything depends on like what you need, what kind of mesh you want to get, what you're working with, what scan data you're working with, and what are your requirements. So here you can see the like curves being visualized in the quad remesh node as like guide weights, and they're at the max. And yeah, I have to say thanks to Matt Estella, because this was actually his attempt, because I was just going to show vanilla quad remesh. So because we don't currently have a way to easily generate the curve guides within quad remesh, this was the kind of like, this is what we had to do in the meantime on the interim. So up here is my shoe. Let's go through. And it's super tiny. So as I said, like, yeah, different scale, different settings, of course. So the normal in this case, I just like left it as is. I can turn off my visualizer. I don't need it now. So here is the mesh of it. And that was pretty quick, you saw. And if you're not like me, you might actually read stuff in the notes that has the option reverse normals instead of putting an extra one down. So here is actually the curves that I drew on that shoe. And, you know, it's actually pretty messy. I just drew it with a mouse, so there's a lot of disconnects, but I just fused them all together, resample and then fuse it again. And then ultimately I get this shoe. And I template that, turn on the wireframe unshaded, so kind of looks like it follows something, but if I turn on the rest of them and see, it might just be a placebo. But again, like, this is in beta, as we mentioned many times, but where is it? This last one is the one with the actual guide weights at 100. The one at the back is just where the curves were drawn the first time, because I shifted the geometry. The one next to it is, you can even see the differences actually. So here, this one has the same settings, but with no guides. So looks better, I think, with guides. Seems to work, not fully placebo. In the back, looks pretty much the same. It's more straight here, I would say. It's kind of like got a curve here. And then this one, you guys might be wondering, like, what's going on here? This, like, it's pretty hideous. So this was actually something that the developer mentioned as a suggestion to try. So again, depending on what your scan is, the quad remesh is literally a remesher. So it will, as a first pass, mesh your geometry. So let's just do that. And there's two options in this output, which is extracted mesh, which are those two that we have on this far end. And then this global parameterization is actually the meshing, like triangulation of it. And I'm gonna turn on some of the visualizers within Quad Remesh to show you. You can see, oh, let me turn this off. This guy. So everything's triangulated, and if you hit enter to get to the view state. So those field singularities, these are those blue and red dots. I will ask Justin to do a masterclass to explain in like proper mathematical terms what these things do. He said something about them being like a puncture in the mesh, and it sounded like a tear in space-time continuum. And then the yellow things are seams. I found that this is not my PC, this is Attila's, but when I was working on a MacBook or also my PC at work, the seams and field singularities visualizer made it quite slow. So if you don't care to see those, then just turn it off and it will be much snappier. And then the direction field is where this is like, doesn't have any guides. So that's why the mesh I showed earlier was just like having different, can I actually see it? No, I can't. To do that. So that's where I got all this like kind of irregularities, because it's not looking at anything. But if I change that here to the crease, but that's, yeah, the direction field. And so you can see these things that are the star shapes. Those are the arrows that are oriented some specific way, and where all the super concentrated areas is where the action is happening. There's also an edge option in field, and basically I was told don't use that, so don't use that. So what about the other goodies? In Houdini 19.5, for the MtlX procedural 2Ds, we had just what you see here. And in 20, we have quite a bit more. These are just like a few that I've highlighted. And I don't believe that we had time to cover any of these or even mention it. Maybe you caught it in the feature scroll. These are some of them. 2D procedurals. And I know Rob PK's already covered like Material Linker and everything, Material Catalog and the AMD Material Library, but these are kind of like just patterns that you could use to, you know, change your shading. And there's quite a few of them, and they all have their own settings that you can adjust. So I think that's kind of it. Is there time? I don't know. Do you guys want to see like the Material Linker and loading the like some of the default materials that are available, or pass? Yeah, I heard a yep, but just a small. I don't want everyone else to be no. Okay. Okay. All right. So then I have a Material Linker here. Oops. Should leave it on this guy. And so you have these two tabs that are the rules and catalog. And by default, it's, I think, set to the material catalog. But if you want to use the MtlX library, then you have to pick, oh no, this is not my PC. Attila, I'm gonna just write more things to your disk. So yeah, there's a filter here, which works for actually material, the AMD Material Library, as well as our material catalog. So I'm just gonna pick some that I found were interesting. This guy, for example. Then you'll see it populate. And I will mention also, even though it's probably not proper, but just so that nobody's surprised, on the Mac, the selection and assignment of the materials doesn't quite work yet, but on Windows it does. So we're going to do it this way. And let's pick wood. So let's just grab this one and assign that. And I'm going to collapse or expand everything and go back to rules so that I can just let Houdini know this is what I want assignment for. So this one I already assigned it actually. Looks like it's grabbing from a previous assignment. And I'm going to disable this because I want to see everything. And I just want to assign the stand to the wood, which is already there. So that's strange. I'm just talking to myself now, but you all hear. I don't actually, let's try refreshing. Maybe if I just kill this guy, do that again. Okay, there, just had a weird hang. So I think that was mostly what I wanted to show, just like accessing the material linker, like the assigning materials from within Material Linker and the 2D procedurals with the new patterns. And that's it. Thanks. Okay, any questions? Or everyone can just go and get food. Yeah, but yes. Yes, Paul? Yeah. Or, wait.
Thanks. I have a question about the point cloud reduce. What does it actually do compared to, for example, something that I usually do, which is just use a fuse swap to just fuse points that are near each other? Because a problem that I often face is if I have very dense LiDAR cloud, like over 1 billion points, Houdini can't even load it. So I can't even load it to reduce it. So what I usually do is I just import one every 5 points, for example, and then just use a fuse swap. So I was wondering, what are the benefits of using that swap over just a fuse workflow?
I can't answer that because I didn't deal with such a high amount to test, like as a demo prep. But I wish Paul Mark was here to give a good answer. Maybe, yeah, it's a good test for us to go through. Maybe send one of your scans, and then we can.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, no more questions. Thank you very much.